Alright guys, so in this lecture I would like to start loading some images to make our list a little nicer to look at. And also we will be using the Glide library to load our images. In addition to that, we will be using Kotlin extensions just to make our lives easier and to make implementing this functionality more straightforward, let's say. So in order to actually do that, first we need to define an extension function for our image view that will allow us to easily load images automatically into a image view just by passing it an URL. You will see shortly how that works. So let's go ahead and create a new, first off, let's create a new package that we will call util. And inside the util package, we're going to create a new Kotlin file called util. And just go ahead and leave that as file. Now in here, first thing we need to do, we need to define a function that will give us a little spinner that we can display on the image while we're waiting for it to be downloaded. So in order to do that, we're going to have a function called getProgressDrawable that takes a context as a parameter and returns a circular progress drawable. All right. Now we will simply return circular progress drawable. We're going to pass the context here dot apply, and we're going to set stroke width. That's going to be 10f, f for float, and center radius is going to be 50f. Now I've played around with these variables, with these values quite a lot, just to have something that's looking good on my device and something that I think is, you know, kind of the right size. But you can go ahead and play around with these as well, just to get an idea of what each one, what each one of these two variables does. Now we're also going to call start on this progress drawable. So this function will give us a little spinner, spinner image while the actual URL image is being loaded. Now we're going to create an extension function for the image view element. Okay, so we're going to say fun image view dot load image. And we're going to pass a URI of type string that can be null and a progress drawable of type circular progress drawable. Now, in this function, we're going to be using Glide to actually load this URI of an image into this image view. First thing we need to do, we need to define some options. So we're going to say val options is going to be request options. Okay, instantiate that. Dot placeholder is going to be the progress drawable. Sorry, undo that. Placeholder. Okay, placeholder progress drawable. Dot error. So in case there's an error, we need to display some default image, and I'm going to say r.drawable dot let's say dog. It's instead of drawable, we're going to import the r. We're going to say mipmap dot ic dog icon. There we go. So we have the dog icon if there is an error and we cannot load the URI image. Now we're going to say glide dot width, and we're going to pass the context here. Then set default request options. We're going to pass the options that we've created. Then we're going to load the URI into this. And in this particular case, this refers to the image view class that we have just extended here. So whenever we call this load image function with a URI, and a progress drawable that we can get from here, then it will automatically load the image for us. Now, let's go ahead and open up the adapter. And here, where we have the holder, we're going to say holder.view.image.load_image. So now you see that on the actual image view class, there is a new function that we have created in our util class. So that is the power of extensions. We can actually extend the functionality of a class that we do not own with a function that we create to provide some functionality. Okay, so that, I think it's quite powerful. We can use this function to say dogs list of which one, position dot image URL, and then we have to pass a progress drawable, which is the get progress drawable function here. So we can say get progress drawable, and we can pass the context. We can get the context from the actual image view. So I'm going to copy this and say dot context. There we go. So we can get the context from the image view. We have the image URL, and we are good to go. So this should actually automatically load all the dog images into our list. One more thing I need to do before we actually run this, in the item dog layout, so I'm going to open item dog. I'm going to remove the default image that we have set here. The reason why is because in the util class, we already set a placeholder and an error. Okay, so we don't need that default image, so I've just removed it from here. Now, going back to the adapter, I think that is all we need to do. Let's run this and see what we get. All right, so now the images are starting to load. So we can see these are the actual images from the backend API. And we can also see, if we scroll down a little bit, once my system starts to actually function, there we go. So we can see the spinners happening while we are waiting for the image to be loaded. And once the image is loaded, then we will already see the image appearing, right? So we only see the spinner while we are waiting for the image. So that is pretty much it. That is what I wanted to build in this lecture. I think you will agree that our API, our application looks much nicer now with the images in the background, in the list here, and the shorthand information about the dogs here, the name of the brand, the breed, and the lifespan here in the list. So there we go. That is how you would use Glide to load images. I think it makes loading images way easier just because before Glide came along, you probably haven't used this, but I have while I was starting out with Android. You needed to create what we used to call an async task to create a new thread to load the image in the background and synchronize and communicate with the existing application in order to load that image from the background thread. So that was hugely complicated. Glide makes everything so much easier and so much nicer to implement, right? So that is pretty much it for this lecture. That was quite an easy thing to implement in my opinion, but I think it adds a lot to the visual aspect of our application. So as always, thank you for following along, and I will see you in the next lecture.